So, talk to me about the cognitive tools and the framework of Egan.
Yeah,
Can you talk to me about that?
yeah. This is the hardest. This probably is the hardest part of Egan, and I've been working even since writing that book review, which is available in text for any of your listeners who prefer text. Um, if they go to my Substack,
Mm.
losttools.substack.com, there'll be a button near the top where you can access the book review either in the audio format or a couple different written formats. Um, I've been struggling to how to express Egan's big idea more simply, and here's what I have, and then I can put it in terms that I said in the book review. We might imagine that there are two basically human ways of understanding the world: the way
Mm.
of logic and the way of stories.
Mm.
The way of logic is the way that people have been, that in some ways people always have, but that people have really been sort of opening up since the ancient Greeks 2,600 years ago in Turkey. It flourished especially in ancient Greece. It flourished again in the Renaissance in Europe. It flourished in the Enlightenment, maybe more clearly than ever. Um, one of the my perpetual holes in my understanding is Indian history, but I know that
Yeah.
India has a to say rich is to underserve it, a rich philosophical analytical
Yeah.
tradition. And one of my little side projects that I'd like to do in the future is see how historically we see this kind of way of logic
Mm.
developing in India. You see pieces of it developing in China too. You see pieces of it developing in the Americas also, but in other places. But this is what schools have been set up to teach kids: how to reason, how to know the results of science and modern math and even modern history, understand the way that the world really is. Truth is important here. Concepts are important here. Abstractions are important here. Um, but meanwhile, there has been from, probably going back at least 100,000 years, maybe 200, maybe a half million years for
Mm.
for humans, this way of story, where when
Mm.
people suddenly be able to are these apes that begin to be able to speak, we suddenly are able to tell stories, and our sentences are small stories. And the
Mm.
things that all cultures that anthropologists have chronicled, that they literally all have in common, are things like they tell stories, they have riddles, they ask questions, they do role playing, they have metaphors, they have songs, they do dances, they have poetry. I'm probably forgetting a bunch of really important ones. They have the ability to think in terms of vivid mental images.
Mm.
We carry with us as some sort of mysterious combination of our biology and our deep, 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 deep cultural history.
Mm.
This ability to reason, to think about the world using all of these tools. Um, Schooling, modern schooling, and even ancient schooling, if you look back at ancient Sumeria, basically ignores these things. Um, in fact, when Egan points out, when in history we start to really develop this way of logic under people like Plato, they say
Mm.
that the problem is that these things are too powerful. And that what we need to
Mm.
do is we need to destroy these things, because these things are compelling, and these things
Mm.
are not do not necessarily point us to an accurate way of seeing the truth of the world. They are illusions, they lie. And so there is this attempt to by the people who advocate this way to destroy these things at worst, and at best to see these things as, well, maybe they're helpful. Maybe, sure, you could tell a story. You could use some metaphors. Sure, that's good. You should do that. You should do that a bunch. These people will say, but they don't understand that these ways of story, that they are the ways that people became brilliant, routinely became brilliant to survive in a world that thought that they were delicious. That they were the way not only of individuals being smart, but I mean, the way that individuals become smart, right? Arguably, Neanderthals had higher IQs than us. They definitely had bigger brain to body ratio than we do. But our language and these tools, these stories, they allow us to connect up with the people who are around us, to make the things that they care about become the things that we care about. And to learn to understand like what the whole world is by being part of a group, by being part of a tribe. Egan's basic idea can be stated as, it's not that this is good and this is bad. It's the way of logic is good and the way of story is bad. It's not that they're both good. It's that the way of story is the fundamental way. They're the tools that come relatively naturally they come naturally to children when those children are raised in a healthy society, in a healthy group.
Okay.
And those end up being the foundations of the way of logic, that all of our modern abstract intellectual academic ways of understanding the world, of history and science or whatever, they historically, they even came from these things like stories and these things like vivid mental images. If you want to create genius in science or math or history or reading or spelling or whatever, computer science, what you want to do is you want to build the way of logic on top of the way of story, and then to integrate these things together. Whew! Okay, so Egan says it in different terms, but that's the basic idea.